Okay, I'm back to finish off Luke 20. And just to recap, as in the previous video, we were talking about how Jesus was saying how he's the stone, he's the most important cornerstone of a building. Therefore, he should be the most important piece of your life, right? So I didn't want to kind of gloss over that Jesus and God should be the most important thing in your life. And I know that's hard to do sometimes. Like, I know I don't go about my whole day thinking, oh, well, what would Jesus do? Or, how could I, be more like him. I know I don't do that. I'm not saying that's right. I mean, I should be thinking more about that along those lines. So I know it's a hard thing, and you have to be very dedicated and very disciplined. And I'm working on that. It's probably going to be a long road, but I didn't want to gloss over that Jesus is the cornerstone of any good life, of any good building. So it should be the most important piece. So then to get back into it, the spies are asking, was trying to trick Jesus. Jesus didn't fall for it. And now Jesus is asking the spies and the group of people around him a question, and he goes into saying that why do you only call the Messiah David's son? Even David called the Messiah Lord. So, like, why do you think he's just David's son? Jesus is more than just a human. He's of God. So Jesus is Son of God, Son of David. And so I left off, I believe, excuse me, sorry, pardon me, in verse 42, and Jesus is still talking, and he's saying, and David himself saith in the book of Psalms, the Lord said unto him, my Lord, sit on my right hand, till I make thy enemies thy footstool. David therefore calleth the Messiah Lord. How is he then his son? So Jesus is asking him, like, how is he just David's son? So David calls Jesus Lord. David views Jesus as more than just a human. David also indicates that Jesus will make his enemies a footstool and have complete victory over evil. So Jesus is asking the people, if David calls the Messiah Lord, then how can you call the Messiah David's son? And Philip Anthony Mitchell from 2819 Church, I don't know why I can't say that properly, but on the 2819 Church, they have a YouTube channel, and the Philip Anthony Mitchell, he's the lead pastor there, and he goes through this in great depth and explains stuff way better than I can, and way better than my Bible app on my phone. So take a look at what he has to say about Luke, and especially Luke 20 and these verses in particular, because he goes through and he explains stuff and gives you a lot of food for thought. So I suggest you go check him out. So to continue on, Luke 20, verses 45 through 47. Jesus then tells his disciples, who are amongst the crowd that Jesus is surrounded by, to be aware of leaders, and he's warning them to be warning the disciples of leaders who act superior and demand respect. Jesus warns of leaders who act religious just to show off, who look good but are not right with God. these leaders are actually dishonest, and he gives an example of how some of these leaders made a big show of praying with widows, and then they proceeded to cheat the widows and cheat them out of their homes. So Jesus is saying these type of leaders will be punished severely. So be forewarned about that. And that finishes off Luke 20. So then moving on to Luke 21, verses 1 through 2, Jesus again, he's in the crowd with his disciples and amongst all the spies that are trying to trick him. And Jesus looks over, and they're right outside the temple, and Jesus sees that this rich man is casting his gifts, like a tithing. He's putting his gifts and his money into the tithing, into the treasury. And he also sees a widow who just casts in two coins. And Jesus values the fact that the widow is giving all she has, and he values those gifts more than the gifts that the rich man gives, because the rich man still has, more, so he's not lacking. So in verse 3, Jesus is now talking to the group of people, and he says, "Of a truth I say unto you, that this poor widow," and he's referencing the widows he just saw, "this poor widow hath cast in more than they all. For all these have of their abundance cast into the offerings of God, but she of her punnery, sorry, I don't think I pronounced that right, hath cast in all the living that she had." So Jesus is saying it doesn't matter how much you give. It's the heart behind the giving. It's your motivation. It's your reasoning behind your intent, so to speak, your heart. And in verse 5, Jesus notices that people are then looking around, and they're looking in the temple, and they're admiring the temple and all the beautiful things that are in it. And so he says in verse 6, "As for these things which ye behold, the days come in the which there shall not be left one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down." So Jesus is telling the people, that the temple is going to be destroyed. Admire it all you want, but it'll soon be gone. And in verse 7, the people are then going to start to ask Jesus questions like why and when and all this kind of stuff. And I'll go into more in the next video as to how Jesus answers the people. But yeah, I kind of like that. Like I give a tithe every week, every Friday when we get paid, and I give what we can. Not always the 10%, so to speak, that is the preferred amount, but it's become one of my bills. It's not just something, oh well, this is left over, so I'll give this. It's a dedicated amount, and I've got to say, excuse me, that with all the stuff I'm doing, I'm reading the Bible, I'm praying more. I'm not as disciplined as I should be. I'm working on that. And then I'm making these videos to hopefully get the word out, to hopefully someone will stumble across some of these and then maybe pick up a Bible themselves. I don't know. And then with tithing, so I'm doing all these things, and I see a difference and I feel a difference. So, prayer works. Prayer is very powerful. Don't dismiss it. So, but anyway, I'll be back with the rest of Luke 21, maybe later today or on Monday. Bye.